Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Toon podcast. It's a sad Sunday for us in Australia. Having watched Newcastle lose to Fulham overnight, I'm Jack in Brisbane. I've got Dimi down in the Democratic People's Republic of Victoria. It's a bit windy and stormy down there at the moment, Dimi, isn't it?
It is. It was Queensland weather in the afternoon. It was about 39 degrees, sneaking hot, and now the thunderstorms have rolled in. So it's prime Queensland weather at the moment, which is definitely not what we're used to, but just about surviving. Hopefully, my internet survives as well because the lightning is very loud outside.
And actual Queensland, the north of Queensland, is under some sort of deluge as well. So we're actually all right here at Brisbane in the middle. I was remembering just before about 3 years ago where it rained solid for 5 days, and I remember that because obviously it was a big event, but it was when Newcastle beat Brentford as well, and that's how my sort of brain works. I sort of associate natural disasters with football games. It's just the way it goes when you're a Newcastle fan, isn't it? But it was a very disappointing result overnight. It was the second home defeat in a row for Newcastle. So we'll get to what happened soon. But Dimi, what were your initial thoughts and feelings at 4 o'clock in the morning when the game finished and Newcastle had lost again?
Yeah, not great, mate. Not great. It definitely as well when you know you're going to be up in 2 hours when the little one is ready to be up. You're thinking, oh shit, sacrifice sleep and we've lost. So yeah, that's not great. But I didn't really have a good feeling all game watching. To be honest, it was we never really looked in control. Even in the first half when we scored, we'll talk about it. We never sort of got going, and I always thought this game, whoever we were going to play, was going to be a tricky game, considering the League Cup game coming up during the week. And we've had history where leading up to a big game or a big cup game, we have sort of dropped the ball, I think mentally more than anything. And it looked like today that the players, not that obviously that everyone's going to be giving everything they've got for a game, but you could just tell that no one wants to get that red card or no one wants to get injured. Maybe they're worried about something might go, a soft tissue or something, and then miss a big game on Wednesday night. So yeah, it didn't, obviously playing Fulham as well, who are a very energetic physical team similar to us. It probably did not suit sort of the mental state that we're in.
Yeah, the Premier League's got some. They're not sort of like excellent, exciting teams apart from Bournemouth have been lately, but these teams in the middle, they're really good teams, aren't they? They're really well coached. They've got good players. They're disciplined, and they've got some talent as well. And if
Yeah,
you're not on your game, like we haven't been a few times in these games, which we are going to talk about why that might be happening quite consistently. But if you're off it in any way, then you're in trouble, and that's what happened today again. But me and you did the podcast earlier this season. We get all the good ones as we did the Fulham defeat from the away game, and that was a really bad performance as well that caused some real concerns. So we're about 18, 19 league games further on now. But would you say that some of the feelings after this game are similar as to that away performance, which was, I think, game number 5 of the season, number 5 or 6?
I think that one was a lot worse, to be honest. That game we did lose 2-1, but from memory, I think we should have been probably 3 or 4 nil down at half time. We
We
might have been
lost
2 nil
3-1,
down at
yeah.
half time. Oh,
Yeah.
3-1, there you go. Yeah, we lost 3-1. So that game, I think, was that the game that Share missed from about 5 yards? It might have been that one where we had a tap in. Yeah, it would have made it 2-2. But again, that game we didn't look like it, but we defended so poorly in that game. We gave the ball away. And again, similar today, we just did not have control of the ball. And I'm not sure what it is. There's these sort of bogey teams that we've got. Bournemouth's one of them. Fulham this year has been one. They sort of have our measure. They sort of know what we're going to do when we're going to do it, and we sort of come to a grinding halt. And you hope this morning. We had the lead at half time, but it never really got us going, and it's a frustrating to lose twice to Fulham this season is not great, especially when you're. I mean, they are a decent team, but when you're chasing a top 5 Champions League finish, you can't be losing games to the same team twice, and especially losing games at home is really going to cost you. So, yes, considering where we were that game a while back, obviously we went that amazing run and we had a great great time of it in December. But yeah, it's not great to be thinking of those same dark thoughts back in round 5 or whatever it was.
Yeah, and that game was, I think it was our first defeat of the season, but
Yeah,
it was game 5 and we'd won 2 and drawn 2, but it was at that time when we hadn't really been playing well. So
yeah,
I
we'll
think
play correct.
we could have gone top of the league with that game if we'd actually won that, but it was a really bad performance, and there were real concerns that we didn't know what the season was going to unfold like by then. So we were sitting here worried that how, and I think we both thought that we would turn it around and that things would get better, but it was an uncomfortable feeling that day because we haven't played well all season. At least this
Correct.
time we've had a good run, and this is only this is only our second defeat in 12 games, and we've won the other 10. So it's good to keep that in context, but it's absolutely fair to say that this was a poor performance as well. And that is now 4 home defeats this season. So following on from Brighton, West Ham, and Bournemouth. We only lost 3 at home last season, and we only lost 2 the season before when we qualified for the Champions League. Can you put your finger on what it is about these games where we're having struggles at St James's Park, and it's particularly against these teams? Like I've just reeled their names off there, and it's not Liverpool's and Man City's and Arsenal's and Chelsea's. So it's clubs that really are kind of in the chasing pack behind maybe us and Villa, who have got that aspiration, who might qualify for Europe with a good run. But we've now only got the 8th best home record in the league as well, and we've got one more point away from home. So it is a pattern. I think that we're struggling in these games. So can you identify or put your finger on what it might be in this particular kind of game that we struggle with?
I think in a lot of these games, I think our mentality has been off, and unfortunately for us, we do have a fantastic, I think, a very good starting 11. We've got some decent options off the bench, but we don't have the depth of quality that we can rotate players, and we know players are going to come in and be at the top of their game week in, week out. And we're not a top side that we can just roll up and teams are going to roll over against us and we're going to win 2 or 3-0 at home. We're obviously not that top type of team. And the way we play as well is a high, it's supposed to be a high energy, pressing, up and down sort of game plan with your fullbacks overlapping. So when you don't have that bit of energy, when you're mentally a little bit off it, and I think sport everywhere around the world now has, for me, I reckon it's 95% mental. Most athletes are obviously have the talent, have fitness, but it seems to me the mental capabilities of a lot of sporting teams, a lot of teams that I follow, mind you, that they can't
You're the curse.
consistently. No, I'm not, but we'll move past that. But they can't consistently rouse themselves, and mentality problems are an issue. I mean, you look at the game against West Ham. I think that was after a 2-week break as well, and everyone's was riding high. I think we won just before the international break. We came back from Saudi. We're playing West Ham, who were rubbish at the time, and we just didn't rock up. And too many times where we're not treating the opponents with the respect. I think Shearer mentioned this at the start of the season as well, saying it's all good and well playing against Liverpool's and your Man Cities and your Arsenals, and you're putting your best foot forward because that's the big games. But it's these bread and butter games that we've got to tick off. And for me, it's not even the opponent. It's more so I think the style of the way that these teams play. They're athletic, they move the ball well, and they're not physically dominated by us. And we usually physically dominate teams with our midfield and just with our general size. The teams that we've lost to, Fulham, Bournemouth, Brighton, they've all got physical players, technical players who match sort of our strength. So it's something that Eddie's going to have to consider in the off season to think, okay, against these sort of teams, we may now have to play 4 or 5 different players or 3 or 4 different players who suit this opponent. But obviously, we don't have the luxury to do that at the moment. But I think that could be something for the future. We might need to have specific plans, specific teams for certain opponents to go forward.
Yeah, and Eddie mentioned the athleticism as well, which he said was a bit off against Bournemouth, and it was off again today. And even Joe Linton didn't have a good game, and that was quite noticeable. So when those kind of players are not playing well, and maybe I don't want to say complacency, because I don't think this group would be like that, and I don't think Eddie would allow that, but there's definitely a psychological difference with going in against Arsenal or Liverpool. You know that you're going to have to be at your best, and you're going to be got to be up for it. And then you've got teams like Leicester who are just, they're just not very good, to be frank. So these games these are the kind of games where there's more of these in a season. There's a lot of games like this against middling kind of clubs, and I do think that there were a few warning signs against Wolves as well. They had quite a lot of chances, and they should have at least scored 2 goals. We won that one 3-0. Well, that was not a 3-0 game. So whether there was warning signs in that game that we just didn't heed, I'm not sure, but it's definitely been a struggle, and it's losing these games that you don't expect. And if you can't win, just don't lose, And I know that the idea is to push and to try and score goals, and we did have opportunities. We hit the bar twice, and Joe Willock missed his chance as well. But in truth, the first half was pretty even. Second half, we were all over the place, and Fulham deserved to beat us. But Fulham are a pretty decent team. I've already said. I don't think they're as good as Bournemouth. Bournemouth have got a bit extra going forward, but they're well coached, and they've actually won 5 away games now, and they've only lost 3 of their away games this season. They've beaten Chelsea and Forest away, and they've drawn at Anfield as well. So how much of this do you think was Fulham being good, being disciplined, being good, strong tactically, and how much of it was us being off form again?
It's definitely both. I think probably, in my opinion, it's probably a little bit more of us than them. Fulham are a good team. Tactically, they're good. They've got good athletic plays. They keep the ball really well. We struggle to get the ball off them at times today, in both halves, really. But for me, you can tell with us, I think, in the first probably 10, 15 minutes, how our intensity is, and sort of if our passing is crisp, if our combinations are good, you can sort of tell, I think, how we're going to go. And we didn't have really any of those combinations. The goal came for us from a long ball, which their fullback misjudged. So it for me, it was probably a little bit more of us. But yeah, Fulham are a good team. Marco Silva's a good coach. He's done a good job at Fulham, and they're definitely not a team who are going to come to St James's Park and just say, oh yeah, if we win, we win, we lose, we lose. They definitely have a plan about them, and yeah, for us, we just could not match their intensity and their quality, really.
You could tell, couldn't you, after in the Bournemouth game, you could tell after 5 minutes that they were going to score, basically, and they did. Yeah. This game was quite, like I said, it was quite an even first half. I think maybe we just shaded it. They didn't have any shots on target at all. But the second half was completely different. And again, you could absolutely tell that they were going to score. And I think it was no surprise at all when it happened, and every time they came forward, they were getting shots on goal. And it was concerning, wasn't it, that we couldn't arrest that, and we couldn't change and do something about it. And I think that's been a bit of a pattern as well, because the West Ham game as well and Brighton, we completely ran out of steam at 60 minutes as well. So it's definitely worth, I think, looking at these games together and seeing what is similar over them and what could have been different. But were you like me, where you just knew they were going to score?
Yeah. I mean, the first 10, 15 minutes, they were all over us, and we were surviving by the skin of our teeth. And I thought after 10 minutes we had to make a sub, because we looked completely off it. We looked like we didn't come out of the change rooms. And I mean, we made the change at 1-1. Trippier came on, Willock came on, and I think Trippier came on purely because we wanted someone else to pass the ball around, keep the ball, and sort of push Fulham back, because Fulham had that much confidence. They were stepping right up. They weren't fearing us making 2 or 3 passes. They were preying on any mistake that we were making in the middle of the park and breaking free. And it's the frustrating thing for me is during that 9-game win streak, probably besides that last game against Wolves, we looked really solid defensively. We started to look again like we were 2 or 3 seasons ago, where we didn't look like, let alone conceding a goal, conceding chances. And that Wolves game, it was a little bit more open, conceded a lot of chances. They obviously didn't score. and we've gone back to that habit since then. Even the Southampton game against a team who aren't great, they scored one. They had one that was offside by a B stick, so they could have scored 2 goals against us as well. So we're conceding goals again and conceding chances, and for me, that's a little bit of a worry because we don't have a massive margin of error with the team that we've got, with the options that we've got. We need to be pretty much perfect in a lot of things that we do to get the results consistently. And if we're going to be off defensively and conceding 2-3 goals a game, we're not going to be winning. We're not going to be winning many more games, which is harsh to say, but it's the reality where we need to shore up again our solidity in the defense, and that starts with us keeping the ball better. And today we just didn't keep the ball at all.
We'll talk about the goalkeeper and the defense in a bit, because that's one area where we've got selection dilemmas at the moment. But I just want to raise what Sanjay said on Twitter. And Sanjay, for those who don't know, he's an account who posts a lot of. I think he's a football scout or something, and he posts a lot of like tactical stuff on Twitter. And some people don't like the way that he comes across a bit know-it-all-y, and he does sometimes, and he'll sort of quote tweet himself, but sometimes he just says things that are really spot on, and he did that today. I'm just going to read it and then you can react to it. But he says, one thing NUFC really need to improve at is not letting games slide when we're playing poorly. He says bad performances are inevitable, but the best teams adapt in game when that's happening. He simplified things and at the very least ensure things down escalate rapidly. Whether it's going more direct in build-up, dropping off 10 yards, slowing the game down through fouls or time wasting. The best teams sense when they're not playing well and adapt to make life tougher for the opposition. We still haven't learned how to do that. When we play well, we can beat anyone, but when we're a bit sloppy, the crowd is getting unsettled, so we rarely find ways of wrestling back control. Said it's happened a few times over the Howe era, most recently against Bournemouth and Fulham, 2 games where we were notably sloppy, and at no point did we find ways of adapting our approach to cut that out. The first 5 minutes of the second half today should have sent alarm bells ringing, which is what I was just saying. You knew they were going to score a goal. We came into that half well off the mark, and that's when you make a concerted effort to change the rhythm of the game. We didn't do that. We conceded in that initial period and then never found our feet again. He says it's on both the players and the coach, and it's on them to adapt and learn, which we should have faith in them to do. We're a side who is still learning, and these lessons are part and parcel of the process. I think that's a pretty accurate analysis, and it sort of put into words what I was thinking when I was watching it about you can just tell that they're going to score, and we don't seem to be able to do anything about it, whether that's affecting things off the bench or whether it's somebody like Trippier used to come up strong in situations like that, and he would calm everything down. I remember vividly him doing that on a couple of occasions. And he's right, isn't he, Sanjay, what he says there? We do struggle when the game gets away from us, like it has in all of these home defeats that we've had, and we can't seem to get the momentum back and change things up to make things a bit easier for ourselves.
Yeah, I think we struggle when things go against us at home. You'd think it sort of, and the crowd sort of get up and about, you'd think it would motivate you, but I think we sort of go in our shells a little bit, and when things don't go well, we sort of, everyone thinks, okay, I've got to be the hero. We've got to charge forward. Everyone's got to charge forward. We've got to score goals. Share's got to have to dribble 3-4 players. Let's all move forward. And we don't really have a clear thought when we're behind in the game, or even today's game. I mean, it was 1-1 till the 80th minute. There was no reason for us to lose our heads. Obviously, we weren't playing well, but there was plenty of time for us to regain some sort of composure. And it's the home games for me that we're struggling in, because we feel that pressure and intensity from the crowd that we need to attack. We need to score goals. Sometimes you're right, a draw's better than a defeat. So I think we need to assess that, and maybe Eddie's got to say to himself or say to the players, okay, today we're not on it. Let's sort of be a little bit more conservative. Okay, we're at home, and yes, you want to win every home game, but you don't want to lose them. And we've lost 4 now, and quite possibly in all of those games, we could have changed tactics and potentially got a point. And let's say we got 3 draws out of those 4 games instead of no points. That 3 points could be the difference between us finishing 5th or finishing 8th.
Yeah, when it's like that, the ball just keeps coming back and back. You can't keep hold of it. And we've got good enough players and experienced enough players to be able to do something to stop that. And like what Sanjay said, maybe you go long for a bit. And I don't know. I know it's hard because that's a good way to lose the ball. But there has to be something, some way of just slowing things down at the back, maybe, so we're not rushing forward as much. And being humble enough to maybe just say, right, well, it's not happening today. Let's not play for a draw, but let's not try and desperately push for it, because I don't think a draw would be a bad result in a game like this, and it wouldn't have been what we wanted, but it'd be a lot better than losing in the way we did. And I think there's something to be said for that. What can we do as we develop as a team to get better in these situations? Accepting that you're not going to be at your best all the time, and sometimes you just got to get what you can. So I thought that was really sharp and insightful what you said there. It's a bit wasted on Twitter. there wasn't any meltdowns actually today. I didn't see many complete meltdowns, which is good. I think the credit's in the bank again. But I talked about the team selection dilemmas that we've got at the moment. Dubravka and Nick Pope is a big one. Pope's been on the bench for the last 2 games, so there's that one to think about. And there's the centre backs as well, where we've got Botman fit now as well. I think Pope's our number 1 goalkeeper, so I think he should be back in, and especially coming towards the games we've got coming up. We don't want to be. Let's just say we do get through on Wednesday. We don't want to be heading into that game with uncertainty over who the number 1 is. That would not be good. And it only happened last time because Pope got sent off, obviously. But so there's that, and then there's a centre backs where Botman is probably widely regarded as our best defender. And I know he's coming back off a bad injury. But what's your thoughts on this? And do you think Eddie might be thinking it might be time to change things up a bit now?
Yeah, I think Pope's got to play. I mean, Dubravka has performed very well, obviously a lot better than he did last season when Pope was out. But again, I thought the team protected him very well during that win streak. And a lot of those games we were battering teams 3-4-0. So we weren't really being tested as much as we are now when we're not in control of these games. And the other thing, I just think Pope, despite him not being great with his feet, I think he just commands his area a lot better. And that goal this morning, that second goal, you could see the players' frustration because the ball literally landed 2 yards from the goal where their guy flicked it over to Dubravka, and Dubravka's sort of on the ground. And I think it was Isaac or Cher saying, "What the hell are you doing? Put your body on the line. Don't drop to your knees." And he can't lift the ball over you. And I think Pope doesn't concede that sort of goal. And it's, I mean, it's harsh on Dubravka, but Pope is our number 1. And despite him being in the team and Eddie didn't want to change it because we're on a win streak, okay, well, that win streak's over now. We've lost 2 home games. Time for a move. And so for me, Pope has to play. And Botman, look, we threw Botman into the deep end. The guy didn't play for so long, and then we played like 3 games in a week. And now he's back on the bench. So, look, Botman is our best defender, in my opinion. And as well as Cher and Byrne were playing, Botman has to play in this team. And it's going to be harsh on one of them. I think, look, Geordies aren't going to be happy about it because he's had a very good season, Byrne, but I think Byrne needs to come out for Botman, at least for a game or 2, to give Botman and Cher a chance to rebuild their partnership that they've had for so long, and let's see how that looks. Because for me, in the moments where we're struggling to keep the ball, we're struggling to build possession, I think not having Botman in there, people forget Botman's very good on the ball as well, and he can spray a pass, and it's not just reliant on Cher to do that. So having 2 guys at the back who can keep the ball and aren't going to shit themselves when pressure goes at them, I think that's going to be very important, especially in these big games coming up. So for me, I'd make those 2 changes coming up, and hopefully it sort of kickstarts us onto another run.
I can see both sides of the argument with both of these situations, because Pope he's not been the same as he was 2 years ago since he's come back in this season. He's definitely kind of dropped a level from then, but I still think he's better than Dubravka. And like I said, Dubravka has done well, but Pope is a better goalkeeper. He's a better shot stopper, and I think there's more confidence in the team when he is there. And yeah, I don't know if I would be saying for Burn to come out, but I think it's the left foot, right foot thing, isn't it? Where managers don't like having two left footers, and even though they don't have a problem with having two right footers, but Botman's sort of like a better version of Burn, isn't he? Like he's
correct.
He reads the game a bit better, and he can pass much better. So I can see where you're coming from with that as well. And Burn wouldn't be the kind of player to complain and kick up a fuss because he came out, even though he's done nothing wrong, really. He's the ultimate professional. But I just don't think Eddie's going to drop Burn. He absolutely loves him for obvious reasons. So be very interesting to see what happens with that one. But it is the one area of the pitch where we do have selection dilemma at the moment. And very interesting to see what happens. Jacob Murphy, I feel a bit sorry for him. His 200th appearance, and he got a good goal, but nobody's talking about that. He's continuing his streak of getting goals and assists. But I want to talk about the subs. The subs have not been good, and I don't think it's the wrong subs at the wrong time. I just think the subs that we're bringing on are either not ready, such as Asula, or not trusted to play more than a few minutes. Barnes is injured, Wilson's injured, so attacking wise, the bench looks quite weak. Miggy's gone now, but Joe Willock is not having a good time. He's very, very poor when he came on. He missed that opportunity. He looks a completely different player to what he did 2 seasons ago, and he's had bad injuries and he's struggling to get back into the team. But he's way off his levels at the moment, isn't he? And it's not really, there's not really much point in actually bringing him on to play at the moment unless because he needs to play in some sort of form, but is he going to do that with 20 minutes here and there where we're chasing the game? He's not doing well, is he, at the moment, to me?
No, he's not. He can tell he's the sort of guy. He's a confidence player, and his confidence looks very low when he comes on the pitch. He doesn't look like he's comfortable, and obviously he hasn't played a lot of football. He's been injured. He hasn't been starting many games, but he's a sort of player who we sort of need in these moments. He's got great legs. He carries the ball really, really well when he's at his best, and can also score a goal. And obviously this morning, we'll ignore that he completely missed the ball from 5 yards out. But generally speaking, he's decent in the box. So it's an important, when he's at top of his form, he's an important player for us. But at the moment, you're right. He just looks a guy devoid of confidence. He can't hit a pass. He just doesn't look like he wants the ball. So if I were Eddie, I'd start bringing on Willock to play a wide role because he's got pace. Maybe makes it a bit more simple for him. And if we're going to make a change in the middle of the park, it's going to have to be Miley or Longstaff to come in to replace one of the other midfielders. Because at the moment, Willock in the midfield three is a liability. He does not look himself, and I think it's probably not, especially where he's at the moment, probably not fair for him to offer us to expect he's going to come in and be back what he was 2 years ago with no football and just no confidence.
He's never really been great at sort of passing in the short sense, sort of retaining the ball. He's really good at, when he's at his best, he's good at driving forward with the ball. And obviously, he can't pull off good assists like he did for Isak. But yeah, like he's at his best when he's getting into goal scoring positions, and he has been doing that still a bit, but then he's been completely missing, fluffing his lines absolutely. So yeah, I don't know what's happening there, but he's starting to get a bit of fans on his back a bit. I didn't really want to mention this, but he received some racist abuse as well, which is absolutely disgusting. And I'm pleased to see the club have come out and condemn that. Sometimes things like that are best ignored, but it doesn't happen often in the Newcastle fan base. So, and even if it was a Newcastle fan, probably not. It's just some troll. So yeah, I'm pleased the club have come out and backed him there, because that's not what you want to see at all. See what happens with Willock, but before this run of games, so we had Wolves, Bournemouth, Southampton, and Fulham. That was the last 4 league games. And we said, and we were saying, if we can get maybe 10 points from 12 available from this, that would be a good return. If we'd have won today, we'd have had 9 from 12, which would have been pretty good. But we've ended up with 6 from 12 from that run. And we're probably going to finish this weekend 6th in the league if Chelsea beat West Ham at home. This was a really big opportunity to put some points on Bournemouth, to put more points on Villa. They both lost. And then either Arsenal and Man City will be dropping points as well because they play each other overnight. So it was I need to stop doing this, looking at the league table and seeing where we could be and just thinking about where we're going to finish when there's still 15 games left. But we've got Man City away, Forest home, and Liverpool away for the rest of February. They're our next 3 league games. So we knew this on paper difficult run was coming up. Top 5 looks like it's going to get Champions League with the coefficient, unless something disastrous happens in Europe. Where do you think our Champions League aspirations, hopes sit at this point in time, given the fact we have just won, 9 games before these home defeats, and we've put ourselves right in the mix again?
Well, we're right in it, and we're in the mix, which is fantastic. You're right. We probably would have liked to have had a bit of buffer with a couple of games that we've had in the last couple of weeks. We might have had a handy 6-point lead on some of these teams, which is great at this time of the year. But I mean, beggars can't be choosers. We won 3 away games in a row. We won at Old Trafford. We won at Spurs. We probably weren't expecting to win. I mean, they're not great teams, but historically, we're not expecting to win those games. So, I mean, it's just a typical Newcastle thing. You win the games you don't expect. You lose the games you do expect to win. So, it's a frustrating thing, but we're definitely right in it because the teams around us aren't putting in 9-game win streaks like we did. So we're right there with them. It's going to come down to, in my opinion, the games again. We're going to have the similar games at home against these sort of teams, whether we're going to get those points or not. The teams around us, against the Chelseas, the Cities, they'll probably take points off each other. It'll be sort of a wash, but it's the games against your West Hams at home. Do we play Brighton?
Forest.
No, with Forest at home. There you go. We've got a couple other games at home. Everton at home. Historically, we've struggled. So there's these games that we need to pick up points and make sure that we're securing our sort of our spot where we are at the moment. But it's going to, again, for me, it's going to go down to the wire. And I think that we're probably going to, sadly, in my opinion, we may look to rue this 4-game sort of, not even a blip, but this 4-game missed opportunity, especially these 2 home games, and we might come to rue those 6 points that we've dropped.
We've got City away right in the middle of their Champions League playoff against Real Madrid, so that could potentially, and City have been far from the indestructible force that they have been previously, and maybe the way that they play will suit us on the counter attack a bit better. We beat Arsenal not long ago away, so we'll see what happens. Liverpool's kind of a complete free hit because it's Liverpool. And
Forget Forest, that one. I've already written that Anfield game off. We're going to go there. We're going to lose.
The Forest game's a really intriguing game because they beat Brighton 7-0, which was absolutely outrageous. Not long after they just got beat 5-0 by Bournemouth as well. So we played really well against Forest in that first game, and we've beaten them twice this season, including the Cup. And Forest's record against the other big, like the teams in the top 7, is not good. I think they're bottom of that mini table of the top 7, or they were before this weekend. So be very interesting to see what happens. We've got Cup games coming up before that, of course, as well. But let's park the football for a moment and talk about transfers, because yesterday as well, it was after the game or this morning or whatever, something for us. There was news that came initially from Fabrizio Romano that the club had agreed a loan with an obligation to buy for 15 million if certain conditions are met with Juventus for Lloyd Kelly. There seems to be some interest in Kieran Trippier from Turkey as well. Galatasaray want him. And of course, Miggy has gone now as well. So assuming that we don't bring any signings in by the deadline, that's going to make it 2 years before we actually signed a player for the first team, which is not great, but it's all within the PSR context, and I don't think it's anything to do with the club's ambition or competence. I think it's the reality of the situation that we're in. But what do you make of these departures? Let's assume that Kelly's going to go, because that looks like it's quite far down, and Miggy's gone. What do you make of them, and how big of a risk do you think it is to go into these last? It's 15 league games left, and then we might have, if we get to the final of both cups, 7 games in the cups, so that'll be 22 games. big risk to be going into this this period with not only not strengthening the squad but actually weakening it with the players that have gone or are going to go soon.
Yeah, we're gambling. We're big time gambling on the rest of the season, and I'm sure the fitness coaches, the conditioning staff have been given an ultimatum and a rev up to say we need to keep everybody in cotton wool for the next 3 months because we're going to be relying on sort of the same 15, 16 players probably for the rest of the season. The Lloyd Kelly one's a really weird one. It's obviously we signed him on a free, and that's great. We didn't pay a transfer fee for him, but he seems to be the sort of player that would you'd want to keep around a squad. He can fill in at centre back. He can fill in at left back. He's a versatile player. So the fact we're selling him with we're loaning him out with the obligation. You'd have to assume the obligation is sort of a fait accompli, and it's sort of just delaying when the money actually gets paid to us. But like we were saying earlier in the chat, with all the contacts that Paul Mitchell's got, and I'm sure there's stacks of players on lists that we've seen. I just don't know. I don't understand how we can't find 1, 2 players that we can loan in who we may look to be signing them anyway in the summer, just to help this squad, because the last thing we want is this season and the rest of this season to be derailed by an injury crisis and we don't have the depth. And then Eddie's going to say, "Oh, we don't have the depth." Well, we took the chance. We can't really complain. And I can just see it now. We're going to be in a cup final. We're going to be in a massive game, and we're going to have no options on the bench. We're going to have the same problems: 5 right backs and 3 goalkeepers on the bench, and we're looking to change the game 10 minutes to go. We're chasing goals, and we can't bring on anyone, and that's the last thing you want. So it's a big risk, and obviously there's not much hope we're going to sign anybody, but I would have liked to have thought with what happened in the summer that we could have found a name on a loan. And if they think it's going to stuff up the PSR, I think we need new accountants, because I'm sure a loan with an obligation is not going to stuff up anything.
These are not football decisions, are they, that are happening at the moment? They're business decisions. And let's be fair, 10 million, whatever it's going to be for Miggy, is good business for a 30-year-old who is well past his prime and who was kind of inconsistent to begin with, apart from his hot streak. And Miggy, we haven't done a podcast since Miggy left, so I just want to say he's the kind of character, the kind of attitude that you want at the club. You know, he worked so hard, and he lacked in areas that everybody knows about, but you can't ever criticize someone when they're given everything, and he did. And I think he can be very proud of his 6 years that he's had at Newcastle. Lloyd Kelly's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because there's talk that he's on big wages, but I don't think Juventus are going to be paying him 150 grand a week or whatever it was that they said he had because he was a free transfer. Trippier as well. There's no way that Eddie's going to want to lose Trippier now. I know we've got Kraft as well, who can play at right back, and maybe the wages. But again, if he goes, it's business. It's not football. And then he can go to them and say, "Look, we were 5th, 6th in the league, and then we had an opportunity to strengthen, and we didn't do that." And so, I think it's right that the club are not swayed by short-term results. Like they're not going to change course just because they've lost 2 games, especially with the form that they have been in. They've got a plan. They're going to stick to it. But you have to hope, don't you, that this is them clearing the decks in terms of wages for the summer and getting a bit of more headroom for PSR, because a big loss from one of the 3-year rolling period is going to come off in the summer in July. So it changes again in July. So in theory, I know that they're going to change the system. So it's a 70% squad ratio cost thing. So it's not going to be the 3-year reporting period anymore. And our wages are apparently under 70% now, which is very good because they were above 90% last year. But this activity now, and we just have to be a bit patient, don't we, probably, and just trust that the summer is going to be when we start spending money because we can again. And if we don't do it in the summer, then that'll be 2.5 years since we signed first team players. And then I think very serious questions would start to be asked about what we're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the issue that I've got with it is it's putting a lot of pressure on our summer transfer window, and not just that, clubs around the world know, okay, Newcastle's going to now spend money, so guess what we're going to do? We're going to up the price by 10%. It just seems a very dangerous game that we're playing, and obviously, yeah, it's all business, it's PSR and all this rubbish, but I don't know. I'm an accountant. I know a lot of good accountants. I'm pretty sure we could make something happen to get some players through the door before the transfer window ends.
It is, when you see Paul Mitchell and he's got his contact book and he's got his resume, he's signed all these players for Monaco and he was in the Red Bull group and things as well. So there's no doubt that he's got names of people all over Europe, and so have the scouts, all over the world, in fact. So it's whether they can't make things happen in January, whether they don't want to be changed just because of a couple of bad results. But strengthening from a position of strength is what we haven't done well historically. We've never done that very well, apart from when we signed Cisse in that January, and then Demba Ba got his nose put out of joint because he got moved and we didn't qualify for the Champions League, and Mike Ashley was absolutely furious about that he fought Cisse. But yeah, it's a different world, isn't it, with PSR? And there's no doubt that it is a thing and it is a problem, and it's affected the whole transfer market. It's not just Newcastle that it's impacted, but we sailed so close to the wind last summer that the club want to make sure that never, ever happens again. So going back to what I was saying, I think that this is with an eye on the summer to sell, if we can sell these players and get big wages off the books, but it does leave us short now. It's a risk. And who would have thought that we'd be sitting here 3 and a bit years post takeover and saying our Champions League hopes could rely on Jacob Murphy staying fit? You would just think
God help us.
Yeah,
God
you would
help
think
us.
You would think, wouldn't you, that they'd been taking the funny pills or something and to go for a lie down. But it's where we're at, isn't it? Really, Jacob Murphy is now one of the most important players in terms of not getting injured, because there's very little behind him to come in if he does.
It's very sad. Look, Murph's been great, but you're right. It is. We're playing a very dangerous game, and God forbid something happens to any of our players, really, let alone Murph or anyone else. So we just got to hope that we can muster on, survive, and hopefully we can get some success this season, and then it'll all be worth whatever the no transfer policy has done.
I definitely think we're in for an exciting summer. And I thought that to an extent last year, but I think now we know that we should have.
There's no excuse.
Wiggle
now,
room. There's no excuse, because Mitchell will have been there for 12 months. We'll have been able to plan, prepare properly for this. Let's just hope that we're in Europe by that point, and we've got more of a chance of holding on to some of our bigger players as well, because we want to be building with them. We want to get what we can for the squad players, and reinvest, and hopefully some of these younger players are going to start coming up through the academy as well. So it's definitely a long-term project, and it's frustrating with the PSR, but we just have to trust them. There's no other option, and we have to keep trying to grow the commercial revenues as well. I've seen people say that there's a bit of a gap there, and that potentially as well, and that could be true. So we'll see what happens. We'll call it a night there. We will be back. I think Craig's going to jump on in a couple of days and preview the Arsenal game, which is quite frankly giving me pretty big scare feelings at the moment after the last 2 home games. It's a massive one against Arsenal. We need to try and get through that. Thank you, Dimi. Go and shut your windows and make sure that the lightning doesn't come in. And I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, mate.